So we the Wu-Tang. Our style is Wu-Tang. We'll go out there and chop anybody heads off.
Wu-Tang was deep as I don't know if, you know, a lot of people, but Wu-Tang Clan was to be deep as I'm talking about, you know, deep as 100 people. Like, that's a lot of people to me. For you to try to get 50 people, 100 people, 75 people in the club, that's a lot. Like, booth the knife to go inside the club. You know, we focus.
You mean,
you know, put the shit in their ass, you know, tucked it in between their cheeks, put it in besides their balls. They got the knife inside.
This was a coordinated show of force that filled an entire Manhattan nightclub. Wu-Tang had mobilized nearly 100 people from Staten Island's most dangerous neighborhoods. But the situation escalated when word reached the right people about what was happening.
So D-Rock came to me, he was like, yo, what's up, Pistol, what up, yo, what up, D? He said, yo, so he was, you know, like, yo, these guys trying to front on Biggie and shit like that, man, you know, like I might need you to, you know, help us out, homie.
D-Rock was Biggie's right-hand man, and when he approached Pete, he wasn't talking about typical rap beef. He was calling in serious muscle because Wu-Tang Clan was about to show exactly what they were capable of. So Pete did what he always did when things got serious.
They got the knife inside.
Yeah, sure, they got it in.
They got it in. And outside we got, you know, 5-10 guns, you know, just going around and shit like a cab, just waiting for us to come out so they could pick us up.
Pete made his way to where Biggie was standing, but when Pete told him they should leave, Biggie's response shocked him.
Boom, I met Biggie and I was like, come on, let's go. What you want to do? He was like, nah, let's chill right here, you know. I guess it was part of him not being pussy, like I'm not leaving right now.
But what happened next showed Wu-Tang's real brutality wasn't what anyone expected.
Yeah.
So I was like, you good, ain't nothing gonna happen to you.
Yeah.
You know, and it got to the point where it was like, what's up? They wanted, you know, we go outside, wait for any of these guys, you know, Wu-Tang, I don't care who.
To understand what went down that night, you need to go back to 1995. Hip-hop was experiencing a golden age, but it was also the most dangerous time to be a prominent rapper. Every verse mattered, every album cover was scrutinized, and copying someone's style was asking for war. This is the world Biggie navigated daily, where respect was currency and perception could kill your career faster than a bad review. But what happened between him and Wu-Tang started innocently enough. Buried deep within what many consider the greatest solo album in Wu-Tang history. Raekwon had just released Only Built for Cuban Linx, Staten Island's Declaration of Independence. The project was a gritty masterpiece that proved the forgotten borough could craft stories as vivid as any Manhattan penthouse or Brooklyn street corner. But hidden within those tracks was something that would change everything between two of New York's most powerful forces. A brief skit where Ghostface Killah went completely unfiltered, calling out rappers for stealing concepts without naming names. Except everyone in hip-hop knew exactly who he meant.
Niggas is biting off your album cover and shit. Boom, bad enough, they biting lines like niggas killed me. When they came to some niggas bit off a Nas shit.
See? This wasn't just random studio ranting. Ghostface and Raekwon weren't just Wu-Tang members. They were Nas loyalists. And when they looked at Biggie's Ready to Die cover featuring a baby, then looked at Nas's Illmatic cover with its own infant imagery, they saw theft. In their minds, someone had copied their hero's artistic vision and gotten rich off it. What they didn't know was that Biggie and Nas were actually friends behind the scenes. But in 1995, with tensions running high and egos even higher, perception was reality. And that perception was about to create one of hip-hop's most dangerous situations.
We had a certain respect for Nas. When Ghost said what he said, it wasn't nothing premeditated. We all competitive, whether we like you or not. It's just competition. If it goes somewhere, then that's something else, but it was always about the sport.
The damage was done. Hip-hop fans started connecting dots. The press amplified the tension. And suddenly, what began as a throwaway studio rant became the foundation for something much more serious. Because when you're dealing with artists who weren't just rappers but street-certified individuals with real muscle behind them, words carried weight that could crush careers or end lives. This brewing tension reached Biggie faster than gossip spreads through New York City. But here's what separated Big from other rappers of his era. He was strategic, not reactive. When word reached him about Ghostface's accusations, he didn't immediately rush to the studio to fire back with the kind of verbal assault that could start a war. Instead, he did something that showed his true character and understanding of the dangerous game he was playing. Biggie actually recorded a response track, listened to it, then made a decision that probably saved lives. He told his manager to delete the entire thing. This is what Jacob York said during Bossip Presents Don't Be Scared podcast in 2015. You ever notice that Biggie never put out a diss record against him? He rapped it. He got it off his chest. He just told me to erase it. This wasn't weakness. This was wisdom, born from experience. Biggie was already locked in a deadly feud with Tupac that was spiraling toward tragedy. The East Coast-West Coast War was claiming lives, and Big understood better than most how quickly words could turn into bullets. He didn't need another enemy, especially not a crew as deep and street-connected as Wu-Tang. But Biggie wasn't about to stay completely silent either. He chose subtlety over aggression, delivering his response through bars that could apply to anyone bold enough to challenge his throne. In Kick in the Door, he dropped lines that carried just enough edge to let people know he'd heard the talk.
This goes out for those that choose to use disrespectful views on the king of NY.
No names, no direct shots, just a reminder that Brooklyn's crown wasn't up for grabs. It was the kind of masterful response that acknowledged the tension without escalating it, at least not publicly. However, this delicate balance was complicated by an existing relationship that most people didn't know about. Method Man had appeared on Biggie's Ready to Die album, creating a rare cross-crew collaboration that some Wu-Tang members weren't entirely comfortable with from the beginning.
And RZA's a smart I mean, people don't give him enough credit, honestly.
RZA didn't want you to do the record, right?
He did not want us to do any records with anybody outside of the clan. Keep the money in the pocket.
This created a dangerous dynamic where personal relationships meant nothing if crew loyalty was at stake. While Big and Meth maintained mutual respect, the rest of Wu-Tang viewed Biggie with increasing suspicion. They saw him as someone who had potentially disrespected their ally Nas while simultaneously pulling one of their own members into his orbit. The tension continued to simmer beneath the surface for months. Industry insiders whispered about potential retaliation. Fans debated whether Wu-Tang would escalate beyond subliminal shots. But what nobody predicted was how this Cold War would eventually heat up, not in a recording studio, but in the kind of environment where hip-hop politics mixed with street reality in the most dangerous way possible. Then came the night that changed everything. The setup was perfect for disaster, and it happened exactly where you'd expect it to. A Manhattan nightclub on the West Side, where hip-hop royalty mixed with street legends, industry executives, and people who didn't care about record sales. They cared about respect, and respect in that world was often measured by how you handled yourself when things got real. This is where our story takes a crucial turn, because what happened next involved people who existed on the edges of the music industry. Individuals whose presence could turn a simple confrontation into something much more serious. People like Pistol Pete. Now, if you weren't from the Bronx or connected to New York's street politics, you might not know who Pete was. But in the circles that mattered that night, he was a legend. Not the kind that rapped about the street life, the kind who controlled it. Pete wasn't there for autographs or networking opportunities. He was conducting the kind of business that involved collecting payments from drug dealers and shop owners who understood that certain neighborhoods required certain taxes to operate safely.
Wu-Tang, I really don't know anything about the rap. Don't give two shits. I'm in the street collecting rent, you know. I mean, I'm just being honest with you guys. I'm collecting rent.
I know.
I got the bodegas, I got the drug dealers, everybody paying rent.
Pete moved with serious people that night. Ex-convicts who had done hard time, men who kept razor blades hidden in their mouths, what they called boofed, and knives tucked into their boots. These weren't wannabe tough guys or industry muscle for hire. These were individuals who had survived situations where hesitation meant death, and they carried themselves accordingly. The connection between Pete and this brewing Wu-Tang situation came through D-Rock, Biggie's right-hand man, and someone who had earned Pete's loyalty the hard way. They'd done prison time together. In that world, shared incarceration created bonds stronger than family, because you'd literally watched each other survive the worst environments America had to offer. So when D-Rock approached Pete that night with urgency written across his face, Pete didn't need a detailed explanation. The message was simple, but loaded with implications. Wu-Tang was trying to front on Biggie, and things might get ugly.
Wu-Tang was deep as I don't know if, a lot of people, but Wu-Tang Clan was to be deep as I'm talking about, deep as 100 people. That's a lot of people to be.
This wasn't an exaggeration or typical hip-hop hyperbole. Wu-Tang didn't just travel with their 9 core members. They moved like a small army. Family members, childhood friends, affiliate crews from Staten Island projects, people who weren't in the music business, but were definitely in the life. They commanded presence wherever they went, turning every public appearance into a show of force that communicated their serious intentions. Pete's response to D-Rock's request was immediate and decisive. This wasn't about rap beef anymore. This was about loyalty, and in Pete's world, loyalty trumped everything else, including personal safety. As he made his way through the crowd toward where Biggie was posted up, he could feel the energy in the room shift like electricity before a storm. This was the kind of moment that could turn deadly in seconds, where all it would take was one wrong word, one misinterpreted gesture, or one person deciding they'd been disrespected to transform a tense situation into a tragedy. But what Pete found when he reached Biggie surprised everyone who witnessed what happened next, and would become the defining moment of the entire confrontation. When Pete finally reached Biggie in that crowded hallway, he expected to execute a simple extraction, lead Big to safety before things escalated beyond anyone's control. The smart play, the survival play, would have been to exit immediately. But what happened next surprised everyone present and revealed something profound about Biggie's character that no song or interview could ever capture.
Got you, and we stay with, like I said, we stay with the knife on us, we stay focused, so it was like, we got you. Biggie came, we said, what's up, man, what up, Big? Boom, I met Big, and I was like, come on, let's go. What you want to do? And he was like, nah, let's chill right here, I guess it was part of him not being
This moment defined everything that followed and everything that had led up to it. Here was Biggie, surrounded by potential violence, outnumbered by what felt like half of Staten Island, with tensions thick enough to choke on, and he refused to move. Not out of stupidity or false bravado, but from a calculated understanding of what backing down would mean for his reputation and his future in hip-hop. This wasn't just about that night or even about Wu-Tang specifically. This was about establishing once and for all that Christopher Wallace from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn couldn't be intimidated by numbers, reputation, or implied threats. In hip-hop culture, your credibility was everything, and running from Wu-Tang would have damaged his standing beyond repair. Pete respected that decision immediately, recognizing the kind of courage it took to hold your ground when every logical voice in your head was screaming to leave. He'd seen plenty of tough guys crumble when faced with real pressure, but Biggie stood firm without escalating the situation unnecessarily. There was no chest thumping, no loud threats, no attempts to match Wu-Tang's energy with aggressive posturing of his own. What made this standoff even more intense was the level of preparation on both sides. Pete's crew wasn't just there for show. They were positioned strategically throughout the venue, ready for whatever might unfold.
They got the knife inside.
Yeah, sure, they got it in.
They got it in. And outside we got, 5-10 guns, just going around and shit like a cab, just waiting for us to come out so they could pick us up.
These weren't industry bodyguards collecting paychecks or wannabe tough guys trying to build reputations. These were men who had earned their standing in environments where reputation meant survival, and they had weapons stashed throughout the club with backup waiting outside in taxi cabs circling the block like sharks. But Pete also understood something crucial that separated this situation from typical street confrontations. This wasn't about proving who was tougher or settling old scores through violence. This was about maintaining balance in a situation that could spiral into tragedy, affecting not just the individuals involved, but entire communities and industries that depended on these artists. So Pete positioned himself next to Biggie and sent a clear message without saying a word. Anyone who wanted to touch Big would have to go through him first. It was the kind of silent communication that everyone in that environment understood perfectly. Respect acknowledged, boundaries established, consequences clarified. What followed was one of the most tense standoffs in hip-hop history, where Wu-Tang held their positions across the room while Biggie refused to move from his spot. Pete's crew stayed ready for action while maintaining the discipline not to create it unnecessarily. And for several minutes, that felt like hours. Everyone just waited. No punches were thrown, no weapons were drawn, no voices were raised. Just two powerful forces measuring each other while the rest of the club held its collective breath, understanding they were witnessing something that would be talked about for decades. This standoff revealed the true nature of power in hip-hop's most dangerous era. It wasn't always about who could inflict the most damage, but about who could command the most respect while maintaining control over their own actions and reactions. What made this confrontation so significant wasn't the potential for violence. It was what the lack of violence revealed about the sophisticated power dynamics at play. Wu-Tang's true brutality wasn't their willingness to fight. It was their ability to organize and command respect through pure presence and reputation. This level of influence came from their shared background in Staten Island's housing projects, where survival required collective strength and unwavering loyalty. They had grown up watching each other's backs, sharing resources, and facing threats as a unified front. When they entered the music industry, they maintained that same mentality, treating business disputes like neighborhood politics and artistic disagreements like family matters. Their brutality wasn't about individual toughness. It was about collective power that transcended typical crew dynamics. When one Wu-Tang member had a problem, it automatically became everyone's problem. When someone disrespected the crew, they responded as a unit with the kind of coordination that made them more intimidating than any single tough guy could ever be. This organizational strength was embodied perfectly by Ghostface Killah, whose street credibility provided the foundation for Wu-Tang's reputation. Before rap fame transformed his life, Ghost was known throughout Staten Island's Stapleton houses as part of a stick-up crew that robbed drug dealers and enforced neighborhood politics through direct action.
Ghostface, according to your book, was actually part of a notorious stick-up crew in Stapleton. And in fact, he had actually cut a guy's face that you knew.
Yeah, youngster, yeah, you know what I mean? A little hustler. You know, it was a kid that, you know, he was on the block. He wasn't running with us, but he was out there running around us.
This wasn't posturing for album sales or manufactured controversy for media attention. This was documented street activity that had earned Ghost genuine respect and genuine enemies long before anyone outside Staten Island knew his name. His transition from street enforcer to rap superstar hadn't diminished his reputation. It had amplified it by giving him a platform to project that energy to a much larger audience. Understanding this context makes the confrontation with Biggie even more significant. Wu-Tang wasn't just defending their artistic principles or expressing disappointment about perceived style biting. They were demonstrating the full weight of their reputation and organizational capability, showing Biggie and everyone else present exactly what kind of force they represented when their respect was challenged. That night in the club, Biggie was facing more than individual artists expressing grievances. He was confronting an entire community's worth of loyalty and street politics that had been translated into mainstream success without abandoning core principles. Wu-Tang's presence communicated a simple but powerful message. They weren't there to discuss music or negotiate business deals. They were there to address what they perceived as disrespect, and they were prepared to handle it however necessary. The fact that violence didn't occur wasn't because either side was unprepared or unwilling. It was because both sides recognized something valuable in each other that transcended their disagreement. This recognition would become even more important as time passed and the true nature of their relationship became clear. What happened after that tense standoff revealed the difference between authentic street politics and manufactured industry drama. Nobody threw punches that night. Nobody pulled weapons or allowed ego to override judgment. Instead, something more valuable occurred: genuine recognition between individuals who understood exactly what the other represented. The confrontation could have destroyed careers, ended lives, or created a war that consumed multiple communities. Instead, it created the foundation for mutual respect that would outlast the original disagreement and eventually transform into something approaching friendship. Biggie had proven he wouldn't be intimidated, even when facing overwhelming odds and the kind of organized pressure that had broken stronger men. Wu-Tang had demonstrated their loyalty and organizational strength without needing to resort to violence to make their point. Pete had shown what authentic friendship looked like under extreme pressure, risking his own safety to support someone who mattered to him. But the most profound moment came years later, when the artificial barriers created by miscommunication and industry politics finally dissolved. In 1997, just one day before Biggie's murder in Los Angeles, Ghostface Killah approached him with words that carried the weight of everything that had transpired since that original skit was recorded.
Ghostface approached Biggie and said, yo, I just want to let you know, man, that we love you. We ain't got no problems with you. We ain't on that. Yo, I hope you feel my sincerity and know at the end of the day, if I offended you in any kind of way, I apologize.
Real rap, real rap.
This was the first and only time Ghostface and Biggie ever spoke face-to-face as individuals rather than representatives of competing camps. No crews surrounding them, no industry pressure, no media attention, just two artists acknowledging each other's talent and worth. They shook hands, exchanged genuine respect, and for a brief moment, it seemed like all the unnecessary tension had finally been resolved. Less than 24 hours later, Biggie was dead, murdered in a drive-by shooting that shocked the entire hip-hop community and robbed the culture of one of its most gifted voices. The tragedy of his murder hit Wu-Tang harder than many people expected, revealing that their respect for Biggie had always been stronger than their disagreement with him. Despite their public tensions and that dangerous night in Manhattan, they had always understood that he represented the same New York excellence and artistic integrity they embodied. Ghostface took Biggie's death hard, maybe even harder than Tupac's, and that says a lot. This wasn't just about music or fame. Big was one of their own, New York blood. His loss hit close to home, like losing a brother. For Ghost, it wasn't just a tragedy, it was personal. A wound that cut deep into the heart of the city and the culture they all came from. This response revealed the true nature of that confrontation in the club. It was never about hatred or genuine animosity. It was about principles, loyalty, and the complex dynamics that governed respect in hip-hop's most dangerous era. Wu-Tang had pressed Biggie because they believed he had disrespected someone they cared about. When they realized their perception was wrong, they were mature enough to acknowledge it and extend genuine friendship. The tragedy was that this recognition came so late and that Biggie's death prevented what could have been a powerful collaboration between artists who shared more similarities than differences. In the end, they were all part of the same legacy, a generation that built hip-hop with intelligence, authenticity, and the understanding that real strength doesn't always need to prove itself through destruction. Sometimes the most brutal thing you can do is show mercy when you have the power to do otherwise. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to move when everyone expects you to run. That's the real lesson from that night in Manhattan, and why it remains one of hip-hop's most important moments. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't happen, and what that restraint revealed about the character of everyone involved. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.